Okay, welcome to the top half rebuild of my 97 SL600 M120 motor. So first thing, remove all the little appearance plastic pieces, pretty straightforward. And remove the cable and air hose guides. And then the zip ties that hold on the wiring harness to the fuel rail there. And start removing the grounds on the front of those the wiring harness that runs down each bank of cylinders. You can see there where the harness was cut. Anyway, then unplug all the coil packs and unplug all the injectors. Remove the wiring harness where it comes in through the firewall there. And you can see me undoing the ejectors. Then start pulling that cable out, starting with the right bank there, removing, I can't remember, those go to the cams or something, I think. Then the cam solenoid, removing that on both sides. Those connectors actually fell apart when I tried to remove them, so I had to splice in some junkyard connectors. Then removing the map sensors. Those actually had melted. The insulation on those had melted. Apparently it's a common problem with the V12 because of the heat. We'll get to those later. Anyway, I'm unhooking the MAF and the temperature sensor and the air box. Remove the air box and removing all the air lines there that go to the map sensors. And there's the map sensors out. And there's a mystery piece I just found in there. That's a cable that goes down to, I think it's the pump. Anyway, remove that. That's actually part of the wiring harness. It loops all the way around the front of the engine, then down by the power steering pump. So I'm removing the fuel rail here, 4 bolts. I think it's a 6mm. But then before I did that, I realized I better remove that that vacuum piece. Basically goes from the front of the intake to the rear. Removing more of the vacuum tubing there, then the fuel lines, basically relieve the pressure. It didn't have much pressure, and then remove the lines. Pretty straightforward actually for this car. So there you can see with the wiring harness moved out of the way, just popped out the fuel rail. Actually, one of the injectors came off in the runner because it was just really stuck in there, but was able to put it back together, and it's not leaking gas. So huzzah. Anyway, then removing some of the vacuum coupling and stuff on the left side of the engine there, as well as the ETAs, the electrical the throttle actuators or whatever we used to call a throttle body. Then working on the right side of the motor, removing its air box and MAF wiring, temperature sensor. Oops, that broke. Gotta glue it. Yeah, removing all the stuff to the MAF here, or rather the ETA. Removing the transmission dipstick and the little, those are like little rubber stoppers that the intake plenum rests on for the air intake. Bolt to the valve covers. Then I figured to get that air intake out, I actually had to remove the front engine hoist bracket and the thermostat. So I drained the coolant here and did that, and then bang, popped right out. So now I'm just left with the valve covers there. It's pretty messy with that air intake off of there. Anyway, just went about removing them. There you can see where the smaller bolts are. Any photo here is with the smaller bolts. Everything else was a standard, all the same size. Remove the ground there. The ground there is for the ABS controller. Removed a pipe there at the firewall just to get some clearance. You can see they were in pretty bad shape here. But yeah, popped them off, wrapped it with saran, and then removed those spacers where the air intake attaches to the cylinder heads. Anyway, and then sanded up those spacers, put in some new gaskets on both sides, and installed them, bolted them in, and then cleaned up the ETAs with some throttle body cleaner. and one of the connectors for the ETA was actually corroded. I think it was the cause of my misfire, so I replaced that connector from a junkyard. Got the intake and the valve covers powder coated chrome. A lot of shots of this because it's beautiful. Anyway, I put the valve covers in and attached the dipstick. I started to take attachment stuff, and then I realized it went in pretty much the way I took it off, so I stopped taking photos here. But I tested out the map sensors since they'd melted, and that's about what they should be, 1.3 with 20 on the vacuum, and I think about 3.3 with 5, 3.8 the rest, somewhere around there. So I just put them back in. That had a cracked, some type of filter on the bottom of that. So I just gorilla taped it with a zip tie, called it good. So you got the fuel rails back in, and then it's all buttoned up. So yeah, that's the end of that. So I started it up and got a few codes right off. One was for the electronic throttle actuator. Didn't say which one, but since I rewired the one on the left side, I figured that was the one. So I rechecked the wiring, and it turned out that the wiring in the all data was actually, which is taken from the manual, is actually backwards, or well, it's just erroneous. It has nothing to do with my car apparently. But I made some educated guesses and hooked up a voltmeter and kind of checked what signals were where, and got it wired up right. So I cleared the codes, drove it again, and this time got a misfire on cylinder 10 and got some type of a solenoid, right bank solenoid failure code. And since I had also replaced the connector on both of the solenoids, because those are the ones that had fallen apart due to time and the heat when I removed them, I figured I'd rewire that one backwards. I checked it once again. It was wired correct per the manual, but somebody's having fun out there. But the numbers on connectors were actually backwards from the way the manual had them. So I reversed it. It was fine, and then swapped the coil pack from cylinder 10 to 9. Checked the wiring on the injector, looked fine, and cleared the codes. Retested it, and it was misfire on cylinder 9. Bought a new coil pack and coil, and drove like a dream. So now got a shiny motor, no oil smell, no misfires. Everything's good. Really not too tough of a job. So thanks for watching, and have a good day.